Let's get to the news and the drama over the Signal group chat. Now, you heard this story yesterday, right? The long and the short of it is a group of Trump's top security officials, Pete Hegseth, Secretary of Defense, Mike Waltz, National Security Advisor, and J.D. Vance, our vice president, and others were on a group text chain that I think involved 19 people in total. And Mike Waltz appears to have been the one, though not totally confirmed, who added, clearly accidentally, the Atlantic editor-in-chief, Jeffrey Goldberg, who's just, of all people to add, just the worst person. You know how many stories he's gotten wrong? Let me put it to you this way. He thinks that Mark Milley is a patriot and wrote a whole article calling him the patriot for his promise to betray the sitting president of the United States and to tell the Chinese if we ever decided to plan some attack on them. That would be treason. That would be punishable by death. It's not something that makes you a patriot unless you're Jeffrey Goldberg, and that's how you see that. And that's how you see all stories involving Trump or any Republican. So the fact that he got added is a nightmare. There are some people saying Mike Waltz is a neocon. That's why he had Jeffrey Gold. Can I tell you, if you saw the people in my contacts, you wouldn't know what to think. You'd be so confused because in Mike Walz's position as a guy who's been in politics forever, or in Jeffrey Goldberg's, frankly, you have a lot of contacts. You meet people, they give you their contact, you put it in there. You never know when you might need them, or you might need to yell at them. In Mike Walz's case with Goldberg, I don't think you can draw any conclusions from the fact that he had him in the contacts, and we don't know who he was trying to add, but clearly he made a mistake. And now the left is treating this like we had a nuclear meltdown as a result of inappropriate group messaging on Signal. And I'll just start by saying this. If it were me, and I were the administration, I think I would have just said, we made a mistake. We'll look into how it happened and we'll let you know. Thank God nothing bad came out of it. And it was, on an encrypted channel, thank goodness. But sure, we can shore up our communications and will. And that's it. This is not Watergate. This is not the Pentagon Papers. People need to calm the F down. The mission they were discussing when we fought back against the Houthis in Yemen, that was a huge success. We took out a bunch of Houthi leadership. We threatened Iran. It went off without a hitch. It's true, it could have gone poorly if Mike Waltz had CC'd Iran. I'm guessing that's probably not a contact he just would have abbreviated on there. But in any event, it didn't go badly. It didn't get leaked to anybody other than, yes, a guy who hates Republicans, but doesn't necessarily hate America because he did nothing to undermine the mission. So that's where it is. It's really not that big a deal. It's not great. Don't get me wrong. It's not great. We don't have to treat this like everything about the report is wrong. I was whatever. He clearly got added erroneously. Can we move on? It's bad. You should fix it. Tell us how you're going to fix the communications. Off we go. All right. Joining me now to discuss that and all the stories in the news, the hosts of the America This Week podcast, author and novelist Walter Kirn, and Racket News editor Matt Taibbi. Great to have you back, guys. How you doing?
Very good. How are you doing, Megyn?
Splendidly.
All right. So what do you make of my take on Signalgate? Signal being the encrypted messaging app where they were having this conversation and clearly had the eventually oh shit moment of realizing somebody had added Jeffrey Goldberg to the message chain. Matt, I'll start with you.
I think I need to know a little bit more about how this story happened before I can accurately comment on it, because the notion that of all people in the world, the journalist who is probably most hostile to Donald Trump was added to this chat chain about an attack on Yemen. It's so incredibly improbable that the circumstances of it need to be understood fully before we can properly assess it, I think. I mean, was it a genuine accident, or what else happened here? It just, something about it doesn't smell entirely kosher to me.
That's interesting. There is some speculation online, just on X, random folks posting. Is there any chance he was intentionally added as a means of getting a discussion, which didn't make anybody look bad? I think to the contrary, it made them all look very thoughtful, and they're debating the pros and cons. And, is this something that we really want to take on? That's what JD was saying. Like, Europe has 40% of its commerce going through these channels. We have 3. Should it really be our problem? And then some exchange about, well, yeah, but we're the only ones who can do it. So if we're going to push back at all, it should be us. Whatever. The actual chatter did not make them look bad. It was simply the fact that it was happening on Telegram, and they added Jeffrey Goldberg. So, Walter, some of the speculation online was, did they intentionally add him so that they could possibly telegraph to the Europeans where we actually stand on this, and that they may need to pick up any slack that happens from this point forward? There's zero evidence to support any of that. I'm just picking up on what Matt suggested there.
Well, what I found curious is that if I were a somewhat hostile journalist and were added accidentally to a group chat that included the vice president, the secretary of defense, and a national security advisor, I would lay low for a while and not blow my cover. I would say, oh, wow, I just got an accidental pipeline into the very heart of the security state. Maybe I'm not going to come out the first time I get a little bit of news. So it was interesting to me that Goldberg decided to sort of blow this once in a lifetime chance to surveil the inside of the White House.
He could have had a 4-year scoop.
Oh, exactly. I'd have been writing a book. I'm waiting for the World War III war plan, not the, bombing of the Houthis, which, isn't all that controversial. But
no,
as you say,
that's a good point.
As you say, I think it made Vance in particular look good. He can't be construed as a Trump toady after looking at this. He had some principled differences with Donald Trump. He said this conflicts with our messaging about Ukraine, with our general anti-war stance. Also, as you mentioned, it seems to favor the European interests over our own. If we're going to play games with conspiracy theories and 4D chess, it's J.D. Vance, I think, who comes out looking best, because it shows that he's both in the loop, independent, thoughtful, and nobody's fool. At the same time, he plays with the team. All I know is that I'm Jeffrey Goldberg sitting there going, wow, I had a bug in the White House and now I don't. Also,
that's so true.
I have never.
Somebody online said, it should be a criminal act not to share the group text chains that Jeffrey Goldberg had internally, when realizing that this was a real text chain he was on with the national security team. Like, holy shit. And then, of course, even better would have been to see the reaction of the people. I mean, who among us hasn't CC'd somebody where you're like, oh God, I didn't mean to do that. Yeah. But this is next level. This one's not your average oh shit moment, Matt. And of course, the Democrats, who have completely fallen apart, who have zero support amongst their own party. We talked about yesterday some of the numbers on Team Blue. They're in worse shape now than they've been in 50 years. Sense an opportunity to have a good news cycle. And they're right to capitalize. I mean, if I were a Democrat looking to change the narrative about what a mess my party is, sure, this will do for a couple of days. I'll ride this one. And so what we saw this morning in front of Senate Intel was they called in the national security apparatus. This is a pre-scheduled thing on global threats. And they decided to make the most of this, including Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, who's a Dem, versus Tulsi Gabbard and John Ratcliffe, head of the CIA. Watch.
Director Gabbard, did you participate in the group chat with Secretary of Defense and other Trump senior officials discussing the Yemen war plans?
Senator, I don't want to get into this.
If it's not classified, share the text now. So you were the John Ratcliffe on that chat.
I was.
Thank you.
Can I provide some context, Senator, to that?
Yes, but I've got a series of questions.
Well, but I think it's important because at the outset, you made a couple of comments about signal messaging using encrypted apps. So that we're clear, one of the first things that happened when I was confirmed as CIA director was signal was loaded onto my computer at the CIA, as it is for most CIA officers. One of the things that I was briefed on very early, Senator, was by the CIA records management folks about the use of Signal as a permissible work use. It is. That is a practice that preceded the current administration to the Biden administration.
Director Ratcliffe, I've got a series of questions. If you're making the statement, the Signal is a secure channel.
To be clear, in a Signal message group, were entirely permissible and lawful and did not include classified information.
There was no classified material that was shared in that.
So then, if there was no classified material, share it with the committee. This is strangely familiar, and I think my colleagues will remember when you couldn't answer the question, is Edward Snowden a traitor? Man, I have serious doubts about anyway.
It's just like when she wouldn't say that Edward Snowden is a traitor. This is just like that, Matt.
So it's incredibly humorous to watch Mark Warner talking about breaches of security when his own Senate Select Committee on Intelligence suffered an extraordinary breach of security when the head of security for the committee was indicted for leaking material that led to the publication of the FISA warrant on Carter Page in 2017. Remember the indictment involving James Wolfe? Now, that was a story where the circumstances were kind of mysterious because it was a story that seemed like certain people would have wanted to get out. But that really was classified information that was illegal to leak, and it did end up in the press. And it was a major scandal, both journalistically and in the history of Congress. So for him to talk about this situation where they're not exchanging classified material, they're not sitting in a skiff, and they're simply discussing an operation that may be sensitive but not classified. When he says, I demand that you give us that material, there's no reason why Gabbard and Ratcliffe can't just say no. We don't have to give you anything. Right.
Well, by the way, I think we're T-minus like 72 hours before Jeffrey Goldberg releases it anyway, with maybe a couple of things redacted. But I don't think he's going to stay in this like I'm above it all and I won't release it. I don't think he can help himself.
Well, they can subpoena him and get it anyway. So what's the problem here? Why does the Trump administration have to go first? This feels like a giant advertisement for Signal to me. We find out that the CIA uses it and trusts it. Well, at least they went to Peter Strzok, the head of counterintelligence over at the FBI, was talking to his mistress about how he was going to disrupt the Trump administration on regular text messaging apps. At least they've scaled up a little here.
Yeah, good point. Here's some more Democrat anger. It's genuine anger, I'm sure, like the kind they showed when Lloyd Austin went AWOL for days without telling anybody where he. Oh no, wait, that never happened. Here is Michael Bennett of Colorado sparring with, again, CIA Director Ratcliffe on who added Jeffrey Goldberg to the group.
Did Jeff Goldberg somehow, did he create a hoax that allowed him to become part of this Signal thread? Please answer the question. You don't insult the intelligence of the American people. Did he invite himself to the Signal thread?
I don't know how he was invited, but clearly he was added.
Clearly it was. Finish your sentence, please.
Clearly, he was added to the Signal group. Your question is:
you don't know that the president's national security advisor invited him to join the Signal thread? Everybody in America knows that. Does the CIA director not know that?
I've seen conflicting reports about who added the reporter to the Signal messaging group.
Walter, everybody in America knows exactly how this went down. Who added Jeffrey Goldberg? That's it. Period. Michael Bennett has spoken.
Except we three, and we're pretty hip people who try to follow these things, and yet we have no idea. What's strange about it is I've never accidentally added anyone to a Signal chat. That hasn't happened to me.
I've never done it on a Signal, but have you never like misfired an email? I've like misfired an email to like you think it's going to be mom. Yeah, but instead you send it to Maury. I don't know, just something like that where like the autocomplete takes over and you go with it inadvertently. Keep going.
Well, I would have thought that any one of the other 19 might have had veto power over this and noticed it. That's what's strange.
But don't you think, Walter, when Mike Walls sets up your Signal chat, you're like, I don't need to go pour over all 19. Like, I trust Mike Walls.
I have better tradecraft than Mike Waltz, I've learned from this story.
You don't go out and buy a life jacket when the boat is already sinking, and you don't buy gold when the economy has already collapsed. Clearly, others are heeding this advice as gold hit all-time highs already this year. It's not too late for you, and you could have Birch Gold help you diversify into physical gold. Birch Gold specializes in helping you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a tax-sheltered IRA in physical gold for no money out of pocket. You can do the whole thing. You can just do a part of the thing if you want to hedge a little. One recent 5-star review said Birch Gold was, quote, knowledgeable, helpful, non-pressure. Get your free info kit on gold by texting the letters MK to the number 989898. There's no obligation, just useful information. With an A+ rating from the Better Business Bureau and countless 5-star reviews, text MK to 989898 and let the experts at Birch Gold help you secure your future today with gold. Thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.